Hello everyone. I am Dr. Arun Kumar Atri, Academic Council member of University of Delhi. Today, in this session, uh, we would discuss the teaching recruitment rules that have been notified in UGC Regulations 2018. Uh, we also need to see that there has been so much of confusion regarding what are the point system, whether PhD, is exempted if somebody has done PhD, whether he need to, have the net certificate or not, and all that. So I have made a presentation and like to have that presentation simultaneously. I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. So uh, first thing that we need to understand is what are the minimum points required for shortlisting a candidate. See, for appointment in the colleges, all candidates securing 60 marks and above shall be called for interview for the post of assistant professors. A minimum of 50 candidates for the first vacancy and 20 candidates for every additional vacancy shall be called for interview in order of their ranks in the list prepared by a screening committee on the basis of marks scored by the candidates. Now, what you need to understand here is that in each category this would be done. Suppose a UR category candidate is there, SC/ST candidates are there, OBC candidate is there. You suppose there are 70 candidates, those who are and there is only one post. So all of them would be given the call. But there is a rider that minimum of 50 candidates for the first vacancy has to be there, right? Now, suppose there are 40 candidates, those who have above 60, and there are 10 candidates who are less than 50. Now, less than 60. Now, since the minimum 50 candidates have to be called for first vacancy, and there is a one vacancy, and there are 40 candidates having marks above 60 and 10 candidates less than 60, so they all will be given the call, right? So suppose there are three vacancies, so it means three vacancies. So for first vacancy 50, then second 20, and then third 20. So it means 90, minimum of 90 candidates have to be called. Now, in case, as I told you, in case the minimum number of candidates as specified above is not available. For example, in the first, for there is a one vacancy and 50 candidates are not available. That in this case, the benchmark of 60 marks may be progressively lowered as required until the minimum eligibility is as specified. So minimum eligibility jo hai, that would have to be there, that whether it is net or PhD, whether we will see that what conditions of PhD have to be fulfilled. That is the minimum qualification, right? If the candidate is fulfilling the minimum qualification, then these points, API these points which are being required for recruitment for screening purposes, they would be progressively lowered, right, from the 60. And now suppose there are uh, 30 candidates, right? And there is no they all will be given the call, right? You have to you lower the this benchmark of 60. Now, but how the points are awarded, the question is how the points are awarded. For graduation, if somebody has got 80% and above in the graduation, he or she would be given 21 marks, 21 points. 60 to less than 80%, 19 points would be given. 55 to less than 60, 16 points. And if anybody who has 45 to or to less than 55, then he or she would be given 10 points. Now, in case of post graduation, 25 points would be given if the candidate has got 80% and above. 60 to 80%, between a 60 to 80%, the candidate would be given 23 points. And if the candidate has got 55% in case of UR. Now, remember that the minimum eligibility for post graduation is 50% in case of SC/ST, OBC, right? And person with disability, it is less than 60%. which is being there. So it is 20. Marks is 20. Now, if anybody who has done MPhil and has scored 60% and above, he or she would be given 7 marks. And if the score is between 55 and 60%, then 5 marks would be given. Now, if anybody has done PhD, 25 points. Now, always remember that maximum three or four, third and fourth, the MPhil and PhD, the collective marks are 25. So if somebody has done MPhil and somebody has done PhD, the separate marks for MPhil would not be given. It would be included in the PhD marks, 25. Same thing goes with the net with JRF. If somebody is net with JRF, he or she would be given 10 points. If only net, then 8 points. So it means that it is not 18, right? If somebody is net in JRF, then 10 points maximum. Then this next is research publications. Now, 2 marks for each research publication published in peer-reviewed or UGC listed journals. I will talk about this UGC listed journals, and so if anybody has the publication in peer-reviewed or UGC listed, 2 marks would be given. It means maximum 3 papers, 3 publications can be considered. So 6 points at max can be given. Now we come to teaching experience or postdoc experience. This is research experience, postdoc research experience, and there's a 2 marks given for 1 year each, right? So maximum marks can be given for 5 years, that is 10 points for either you take it for postdoc research experience or teaching experience. There are many questions regarding whether the research experience would be counted, whether the PhD, while the time period taken for pursuing the PhD would be counted in this or not. We'll discuss that. Then in case of awards, there are national, international awards which are given by international organizations, Government of India or Government of India recognized national level bodies. 3 marks would be given at max for any award which has been given by these bodies. And if any award has been there state level, then 2 points. So technically, any award which is being there for best paper award and all that, these are not considered as awards, right? There are awards which are given by some recognition which has been there, like best teacher award has been given by the state government or something like that. These awards would be considered. Okay, now this what you can see that MPhil PhD, as I told you earlier, the maximum points that you can claim is 25. If you're JRF and net, the maximum you can claim is 10 marks, and in award category also 3 marks. It means that suppose you have got state level awards or international level award also, then maximum is 3. You cannot get 5. So this is how the breakup is. Academic score 84, maximum research publication 6, and teaching experience 10. This is how you can get the maximum score of 100, right? Now, the question comes whether papers only in UGC listed or peer reviewed journals are considered. See, no, even what you can see is that it's not only that UGC listed will be considered, even peer reviewed can also be considered. There was a letter which you can see. I will like to make it a little bit zoom, and you can see this letter of 16 September 2019 of UGC. The public notice says the old UGC approved list of journals has been replaced with the new UGC Care reference list of quality journals, UGC Care list. And with effect from 14th June 2019, research publications only from the journals indexed in UGC Care list should be considered prospectively for any academic purpose. Now, there are 2 things which need to understand from this letter. One, that UGC Care list should be considered prospectively. Now, it is not from retrospectively. So it is prospectively. It means that with effect from 14th June 2019. So this list has come there, and the old UGC list has been replaced by UGC Care list. So any publication which is being there uh, will be considered UGC list only if it is in UGC Care list rather than the old list. Any publication which is being there after 14 June 2019. Now, the second part is important, that Vice Chancellor, Selection Committee, Screening Committees. So this means the screening committees which are being either for promotion or for direct recruitment, research supervisor, and any experts involved in academic performance, evaluation, and assessment are hereby advised to ensure that decisions in the case of selections, promotions, credit allotment, and award of research degrees, etc., must be based on quality of published work rather than just numbers or mere presence in peer-reviewed or old UGC approved list of journals which is available for reference on UGC website. Now, this means what? This means that the peer-reviewed or UGC list approved list is not old UGC approved list is not discarded. Even your papers published in peer-reviewed or UGC, old UGC list would be considered, but they have to be of good quality. Some discretion has been left to the screening committees or the selection committees. However, if it is in the UGC care list, then it has to be accepted, right? Then the question may not arise. So even the peer-reviewed journal, peer-reviewed publications or any publications in peer-reviewed journals would be considered for the award of marks or selection or screening, right? Now, another question that comes is can the time taken by a candidate to acquire MPhil PhD be counted as a teaching experience? Now, one thing you need to understand is the time taken by candidates to acquire MPhil and PhD degree shall not be considered as a teaching or research experience. अब इसका argument क्या दिया है ये मतलब बड़ी एक important चीज है कि किसी ने MPhil और PhD somebody has spent time doing MPhil and PhD while doing teaching, then either you can claim the points. Now you see here, actually the argument is that what you are getting, the marks has been given for PhD here, and teaching experience marks have been given also. So the argument of UGC is that you can claim points only at one place. Either you claim it at PhD or you claim at, you claim in this teaching experience. So you cannot, while teaching and you are doing PhD, you cannot claim, points at two places. So if somebody has completed PhD in 5 years or teaching while teaching, so in that case it will be 35 points, but they're not allowed to claim you 35 points. So what you will what they will do, they will say that you claim it as 25 points only, rather than this you have to forego this as a teaching experience, right? Now the further the period of somebody, I know so many people may see that in the UGC regulation, this para stanza I have taken it from UGC regulation, and it may create some confusion. The last 4 or 5 lines may create some confusion where it says the further the period of active service spent on pursuing research degree simultaneously with teaching assignment without taking any kind of leave shall be counted as a teaching experience for the purpose of direct recruitment or promotion. So they say that we have not taken any leave, fine. But see, this is basically what they have interpreted as for the promotion is fine. For direct recruitment, basically the direct recruitment when it takes place at the associate professor and above. So at assistant professor level, the screening is being done. In the associate professor level, there is a different criteria for recruitment. So here, this research experience, this teaching experience would not be considered while, or the time taken to acquire MPhil PhD shall not be considered as a teaching experience, right? So either you take it as if you have claimed as a PhD degree, you take that point only as a PhD. It will not be counted as a teaching experience, that time that you have spent. Now, another question is net compulsory for the appointment. See, the national eligibility test on net shall be minimum eligibility for appointment of assistant professor, but what you need to remember, the candidates who have been awarded a PhD degree in accordance with University Grants Commission minimum standards and procedure for award of MPhil PhD degree regulations 2009, or the University Grant Commission minimum standards and procedure for award of MPhil PhD degree regulation 2016, जिसको we usually say 2009 regulations and 2016 regulation, and their subsequent amendments from time to time, shall be exempted from the requirement of minimum eligibility condition of net. So anybody who has done done any PhD as per the regulations 2009 or 16 or later their amendments, he or she shall be exempted from the requirement of minimum eligibility condition of net for the recruitment of assistant professor in the university. Now, what happened that after that, actually this notification, this regulation came on July 11, 2009. Now there was a hue and cry, and they said that what about those who have completed their PhDs before 11 July 2009? So there was a clause added for them, And it says, provided further that the award of degree to the candidates registered for MPhil PhD program prior to 2011-2019 shall be governed by the provision of then existing ordinance bylaws. And all such PhD candidates, not MPhil, only PhD candidates shall be exempted from the requirement of NET for recruitment and appointment of assistant professor in the colleges subject to the fulfillment of following conditions. And these are the 5 conditions. It says that PhD degree of the candidate has been awarded in regular mode. The PhD thesis has been awarded by at least 2 examiners. An open PhD viva voce of the candidate has been conducted, and the candidate has published 2 research papers from his or PhD work, out of which at least one is in the refereed journal. And the last condition is that he has presented at least 2 papers based on his or PhD work in conferences, seminars, sponsored, funded, supported by UGC or any other similar agency. So basically, these 5 conditions have to be fulfilled, and the most important condition is the last one. The fulfillment of these conditions is to be certified by the registrar or the Dean Academic Affairs of the university concerned. Now, it means that if anybody who has done PhD prior to July 2009 has to obtain this certificate from the Dean Academic Affairs or the registrar of the university mentioning these 5 points, then only they will be exempted from the requirement of NET. And anyone who has done PhD after 11, as per the regulations 2009 and 16, it means 11 July, after 11 July 2009, they will be exempted from the requirement of this minimum eligibility of condition of NET. Now, whether any research experience is counted, no, marks have to be given only for postdoctoral research experience. Any research experience you have done as a, sometimes you say I have done as a research, I was an assistant, or I was a research assistant, or I was a research associate or fellow, whatever you say, but basically, whatever the nomenclature is, it doesn't matter. Only the postdoc research experience has to be counted, right, in lieu of teaching experience, which can be given marks. Now, are the certificates indicating the reservation category status of the applicant required to be digitally verifiable? This is a very general question that you need to remember this. Applicants seeking reservation benefits available for SC, ST, OBCs or PWD categories must upload the necessary document the claim of the respective reservation as per Government of India Union verifiable. Nowadays, every state is verifiable, and the candidates also need to ensure it. The basic problem comes with the candidates seeking a reservation under the OBC and EWS. SC, ST, and PWD certificates need not to be renewed. Once they are issued, they are forever. Right? If the permanent disability is there, then it is all. In case of PWD also, it is all forever. Uh, in case of EWS and only OBC, the status may change. So which list of OBC is to be considered? See, only central list of OBC is to be considered in central universities. But in case of state universities, the state list of OBC would also be considered. In central universities, only the central list of OBC is being concerned, which is this. This is a list, and you can straight away go to central list. This is what the castes have been given. You can see all the states, like in Delhi. You can see these are the castes which have been given, and you can check it. Right. So now, what is OBC creamy layer criteria? That you should also know. That there is a were your parents employed by the government? In case yes, then were they Group A officers or Group B officers before the age of 40, or they have been promoted to Group A after before age of 40? Then you are under creamy layer, right? If no, then we have to see their gross annual income is above 8 lakhs, not including income from salary or income from agricultural land. We have to exclude these 2 income. And if it is crossing 8 lakhs, then you are again under creamy layer. So you have to see these things. Now, criteria of reservation under EWS, that is also need to be seen. Persons who are not covered under the scheme of reservation for SC, STs, OBCs, and whose family has gross annual income below 8 lakhs are to be identified as EWS for benefit of reservation. Income shall also include income from all sources, that is salary, agriculture, business, profession, etc. for the financial year prior to the year of application. Now, this is very, very important that in case of OBCs, only parents' income is counted to decide the creamy layer criteria of the candidate. But in EWS criteria, the whole family income is being counted, including the income of the person himself. So also person whose family owns or possess any of the following assets shall also be excluded from being identified as EWS. So irrespective of the family income. So these are the five conditions in total. One is the income, that is 8 lakh. Along with that, agar if any of the criteria is also fulfilled, then also he would be excluded. So either the income or asset. So basically, what you can see is that asset criteria is not available in case of OBC. Only income criteria is there in case of OBC. But in case of EWS, it is also the asset criteria along with the income criteria. So what is that asset criteria? You can see that 5 acres of agricultural land and above, right? One must not have, or the family must not have the 5 acres of agricultural land, or the plot, uh, residential flat. This is residential flat of 1,000 square feet and above, or the residential plot of 100 square yards and above in the notified municipalities, or residential plot of 200 square yards and above in the areas other than notified municipalities. Now, it is also like this 50-50 square yards at two places that will also be counted, right? Or somebody has four 50-50 square yards, four plots in the different areas, then also it will be counted as 200 square yards. So it will be fulfilling that criteria. Now, the property held by family in different locations, as I told you, would be clubbed while applying the land, or property holding test to determine EWS. The term family for this purpose will include the person who seeks benefit of reservation. So that is very important. It means that in case of a teacher, suppose somebody is on the contract basis being placed, and he gets, suppose 70,000, or on a dog basis he gets 70,000 per month, or 80,000 per month. So that exceeds 8 lakh in a particular year. So he would become, so in 1 year he may be a EWS, in the next year he becomes ineligible to get the benefit of EWS. So this is very ironical situation that a person may you know uh, the criteria which is making someone eligible would make him ineligible next year, right? Now, what are the list of approved universities? You can see that uh, if somebody has done the graduation or the post graduation, so university lists have been this has been given on the UGC website. You can see that there's a lot of colleges, universities, right? State universities are also there. There are central universities. There are state university list is also there. Here you can see the state university list is there, and the central university list is also there. So you can see that whether these lists have been, and this is the consolidated list. You can see that they have been there. So basically, many fake universities have come up which are being awarding the degree. So one has to be careful about them. Now there are some common FAQs which we need to understand. They are very technical things. The time period, which time period to be deducted from teaching experience for MPhil and PhD? Is it till the date of submission, or date of a viva, or date of award of degree? Now, suppose somebody has done simultaneously PhD or MPhil along with the teaching. Now, how much time period would be deducted from the teaching experience? Suppose there is a 6 years teaching experience and 3 years the person has done PhD. So, what time period would be deducted? It would be deducted till the from the date of registration of the PhD till the date of notification of the result, right? Till the date of notification of the result would be excluded from the teaching experience. Then, do we have to verify the ISSN number for the publications? How do we do that? There is a ISSN portal where you can verify any ISSN number which is being there. Uh, then approved list of journals. How do we assess this? Do we see the list at the time when the candidate has published, or list keep changing? Yes, I have told you that 14 June 2019, after 14 June 2019, UGC old list has been replaced by UGC Care. And at the time when the publication was done, if the that the onus lies on the candidate to prove it. That when I published that paper, that was in the UGC list, and the UGC number was there. That number is unique. That would not have been allotted later on to anyone. So if that was in the UGC list at the time of the publication, you can see the website, UGC website, then he is or she is eligible to claim the points for that paper, or that would be considered as the UGC listed, old UGC listed paper. Okay, the question comes about the peer reviewed, whether it is a peer reviewed or not, because that can be verified from the journal's website. And if the journal website is not containing anything, then it is totally at the discretion of the screening committee whether they, accept it or not. Then how to do income certificates validation for verifying the creamy layer or OBC? You can just check it on the links provided of the various states, and you can put the certificate number and you can get the results. You can just see that whether it is being there. What about the private colleges, university? Do we count the teaching experience? Yes, it doesn't make sorry in the private colleges, teaching in the private colleges or university doesn't make any difference. The full-time teaching experience has to be counted. uh, I have candidates who are with PhDs have written that they are registered before July and have two research papers published, but this letter is neither signed by the registrar nor Dean Academic Affairs. It is only given by the department. So should we give points to them? This is usually the question arises. So in this case, the screening committee may not award you the points because the letter has not been signed by the Dean Academic Affairs or the registrar. Okay, are marks to be allotted to book reviews and newspaper articles write-ups? Yes, if only they are being published in the peer-reviewed or UGC listed journals. If they are the publication, because it says publications, research publications, and they have been in the form of in the UGC listed journals. How and where do we access the latest cast list of OBCs candidates followed by DU or any other universities? The central list website is there, ncbc.nic.in. There you can find out, or NCBC, I guess. You can search on Google and you can get it. The list, I showed the link with us now. Are marks to be allotted to candidates who have worked in the research positions like research assistant and research associates? Nomenclature doesn't matter. The only thing that you need to see is that whether it is a postdoc research experience or not. If it is there, then points can be counted. Can guest teaching be counted as a research teaching experience? No, it has to be full-time teaching experience, right? Okay. Now, this is what you need to remember. The entire onus of the content authenticity of the information being uploaded in the form of application and its attachment shall exclusively rest with the applicant in terms of eligibility for recruitment and for subsequent selection through due process. So candidates are advised to be careful that tomorrow if the screening committee doesn't award you the points, then you have to see it, ensure it that you have uploaded all the attachments properly. If not, then you are solely responsible for that. The college shall in no way be responsible for error omission. Usually most of the colleges, while advertising, they mention this thing that they will not be responsible. So you have to be, the candidates have to be careful about it. In case the applicant gets screened, shortlisted, selected, appointed on the basis of a credential furnished by him, which are on scrutiny and found to be incorrect, inadmissible, forged, fabricated, falsified, his candidature shall be liable to be cancelled at any stage of the recruitment, at or at any time during the tenure of the service. This you need to remember, that it is not like just you get the, on the basis of any forged claim or false certificate, you get the job and then you say that once I have got the job, then nobody can take action. People have been terminated even after 15 years of service or even just before the retirement also, if any false document has been produced to get the job. The college reserves the right to modify, withdraw, cancel any communication made to the applicant in case any dispute arising. This is the general declaration which the college basically, or the university basically, gives, that the decision of the college shall be final and binding on the applicant. Right? So this was all about the guidelines which have been there. So one has to be very, careful about it. And this is what I suggest you, that one need to see it. So thank you very much for having this, patient listening to the recruitment rules, and thank you very much for inviting me, the Teaching Learning Center, Ramanujan College, for this session. Thank you.